The 2 hours of weather coverage as things have gotten a little bit better, actually gotten a lot better in the state of Mississippi in terms of severe weather. And we'll turn to sports for the last hour of the show. Kendall Rogers joins us from D1 Baseball, D1Baseball.com. Kendall, always good to visit with you. We got a week of conference play in the books. What did you take away? Maybe give me one or two of your biggest takeaways from the opening weekend of SEC play.
Well, I think as we kind of expected, I think South Carolina, I think it kind of proved that, that series against Texas was a little bit of a fluke. Tennessee kind of handled them pretty well. I think you look at Ole Miss, I'll say this. When you look at the way they responded in the series finale on Saturday, that was really impressive because they got kind of punched in the mouth a little bit. And if you're Mike Bianco, you probably wanted to see how your team would handle that. And they handled it extremely well. I would say the same for Mississippi State. That was two really tough losses there to start that series. And the way they finished that, you just kind of wonder, is that kind of the Kickstarter? Is that the igniter for this team, so to speak? And then LSU, obviously A&M going on the road, taking two from the Tigers. Honestly, A&M
didn't see that coming,
series.
right?
They left 15 guys on base on Sunday, and should have blown out LSU, but LSU came back and won. But LSU's defense was atrocious, and if that doesn't change starting this weekend in Gainesville, that's going to be a major problem. Because if you look at their conference schedule, it's easily the toughest in the league.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You mentioned defense. So Ole Miss this year has had its struggles defensively, and yet last weekend at Auburn, they played really well defensively. Auburn has been really good defensively, and it was like a three-ring circus for them, especially in two of the games. Mississippi State's been really good defensively, like 985 fielding percentage, and they make 5 errors, and it cost them at least a game this past weekend. LSU, what's going on with defense in the SEC?
That's a great question, right? I'll say this. I think I feel better about the longevity of teams like Auburn, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State defensively than I do LSU. I'll say this. I saw LSU a few weeks ago at the Shriners Classic, and the same issues they had there defensively, they're continuing to have. They're not making routine plays. They're out of position a lot. They had a play the other day where Mikael Hilliard, a guy who's been there for 5 years, just watched the ball roll down the line. It clearly wasn't going to roll foul, but he just watched the ball roll down the line. So, LSU, they moved Jacob Berry from third base to right field, and that was an adventure. It was like a carnival, three-ring circus out there. So I think LSU, I feel good about those other three teams moving forward. But LSU, I just don't think I don't think they're getting out of that rut. I think they're just a really bad defensive team, which, if you remember Arizona last year under Jay Johnson, they also were very poor defensively.
Yeah, I don't remember that about Arizona, Kendall. I only remember them just absolutely mashing the ball for 3 straight days in June. But I'm glad you remember that about them.
Were those two bombs that Chase Davis hit last night like some PTSD for Ole Miss fans? Because I don't know if y'all saw the clips of that last night, but he had two absolute just missiles.
Yeah, those guys could mash, and I know folks are excited that Jacob Berry, they'll get a chance to see him again this year, even if it is in purple and gold.
I'm sure they're really excited.
Hey, so there are a couple of teams in the East that are interesting to me. Mm-hmm. Florida has really not been very impressive so far. And then we get to the opening weekend of league play, and they go out and they win 2. Really probably should have won all 3. Alabama gets the final one. What do we make of Sully's club this year?
I think Florida's better. I will say this. I think Florida's still a little bit young at some premium positions. If you look at Jed Fabian's little brother, he's going to be a nice player, but he's young. Wyatt Langford has had a productive year so far, but, he's still relatively new to this team. And so I think they've got some young guys at key positions. And, when you look at the starting rotation, I think we all feel pretty good about Hunter Barco in that week of rotation. But if you look at the number 2 spot in that week of rotation, who is it? You got Brandon Spruitt, who has a massive arm. I mean, he's like 94, 97 with his fastball. But, I was talking to Sully last week as they were driving to Tuscaloosa, and then one thing he kind of mentioned was, I kind of want to see him, continue to build with that secondary stuff, because in this league, you got to be able to throw secondary pitches for strikes. And if you look at, the Alabama game over the weekend, he was just average at best. And so for Florida to kind of reach those goals, which is to compete for the SEC championship with Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and teams like that, they're going to have to pitch a lot better outside of Hunter Barco. I think they can. They've got the talent, but they're better than last year. The question is how much better. I don't think we know entirely, just yet.
It feels like a long time ago when Vanderbilt was 1-2.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, they have not lost a game since, and I think when you look at this
16
club,
in a row.
Yeah, that's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, granted, they've played like Wagner and Hawaii and teams like that, but I mean, still going out to the Big Island and playing Hawaii is never easy because of travel. But the thing about Vanderbilt is you look at this team top to bottom. They're just
Hold on a second
really...
now. Hold on a second. You're going to have to sell me a little harder on going to Hawaii to play baseball is never easy. I mean, I get that it's a long plane ride, but come on, man.
Dude, I'm telling you, if you talk to coaches that have to play out there, they said it's not easy because you said, like, they always say, like, when you go out there, like, the last thing that players are thinking about is baseball. I don't know. Maybe you need to get Mike Bianco to do a road trip out there. So you find out for yourself.
That's not the worst idea I've ever heard. But that would turn into a really expensive trip because my wife and kids would not be left behind. That would certainly
You're a high roller, man. You're good.
It would be a big-time net loss, no doubt. No doubt.
But, yeah, no, I will say, so they played well out there. And the thing about Vanderbilt is Davis Diaz, a freshman for them, Carter Holton, a freshman for them on the mound. Positionally, Diaz has been terrific. Carter Holton's been outstanding on the mound outside of Chase Burns. He's been the best freshman pitcher in the SEC. And then you look at guys like, Carter Young, Dominic Keegan, Enrique Bradfield, all the usual suspects have been very good. So, on one hand, they haven't played a great schedule since Oklahoma State. But on the other, a lot of these guys are kind of proven commodities, right? So what you see is kind of what you get with Vandy.
Yeah, they go to South Carolina this weekend. The biggest series in the SEC this coming weekend, and I don't think it's even close, is the one that's happening in Oxford. Top 5 matchup with Tennessee, who at 19-1 is off to their best 20-game start in school history. They come in with a little bit of an attitude, a little bit of an edge, number 5 ranking, and you got Ole Miss sitting there at number 1. This feels like it's setting up for just incredible drama. Weather's going to be good. 3 hard sellouts, whatever that actually means, because they never really stopped selling tickets in Oxford. This was going to be good this weekend, Kendall.
Dude, it's going to be awesome. And I'll tell you what I love about this series is almost like the theater outside of the game, because here's the thing about Tennessee, and here's the thing about Swayze, is like that place is going to be rocking. There's going to be thousands of people in the outfield before Tennessee even shows up for batting practice. And what's going to happen? Like, Tennessee's like the villain at a WWE event. Like, they're going to roll in there thinking like they're hot dogs, and they are. They're really good. But they're going to roll in there with some swagger, with some attitude, and they're going to come out there really aggressive in game one. So I just think the biggest thing for me when I look at this series, I think both offenses are extremely explosive. Frankly, you can make an argument that the two best offenses in college baseball, along with LSU. And so I think the offense is going to be there. I think this series boils down, Richard, to me, when you look at the rotations. How do Chase Burns and Luke Beam or Drew Beam handle the atmosphere, the pressure of being on the road? They haven't been pressured a lot on the road. How do they handle that? And on the Ole Miss side, how do guys like John Gaddis and Derek Diamond handle that kind of lineup? Because I would argue they had not faced that kind of lineup this year. In Tennessee, I've seen them in person. When they get rolling, they're like a freight train. So the starting rotations, to me, is what that series is all about this weekend.
Yeah, it's really going to be fascinating. Those guys can rake. I mean, it's hard.
So good.
And if you were paying attention, you kind of saw it coming, right? Maybe 3 or 4 years ago with Tony Vitello, you're like, this Tennessee team plays a little bit different. They just didn't have the dudes, but the switch that they've made.
The thing about Tennessee when I saw them at Shriners is, like, they can bring guys off the bench that are just as good as some of the hitters they start. I mean, Blake Burke hit a ball on the second deck. He's a guy that comes off the bench. Christian Moore, Christian Scott are both really good athletes that can come off the bench. And so I just think they're a complete team. And you know what they remind me of? They're more talented than these teams, but they were kind of reminding me of the old Fullerton teams that were really good. To where, like, you almost kind of hate, like, if you're a fan of the other team, like, you almost kind of hate them because they kind of have that little chippiness to them. But it fits their personality perfectly. And, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this weekend.
It's ironic to me that this Tennessee team reminds you of the old Fullerton teams with Tony Vitello as the coach, but the Tennessee teams that were coached by Dave Serrano didn't remind you at all of the
It is
Fullerton
really interesting,
teams.
isn't it? I mean,
it's fascinating.
Serrano basically took like a West Coast small ball approach, whereas he should have just taken this hard-nosed Fullerton approach that Tony Vitello is. That's actually a great observation. That's pretty funny.